I believe we are being live streamed. So happy Thursday, everybody. Great to see those of you who are here. Matthew Winters, unbeknownst to us, is an expert on understanding by design, which is our topic for this week. So I will let him take it away and watch the chat. We have a Nearpod this week. We'll keep dropping the link in there if you'll join us. So go ahead, Matt.
Sounds good. Thanks, Clint. And expert is it's shaky. I wrote my thesis in UBD and did some stuff with it, but I will say that I met
it's more than I ever did.
Jay McTighe came to my district a couple of years back, and he was presenting to us, and he said, "Is anybody an expert or have any experience with UBD?" And I raised my hand, and a few other people raised their hands, and he looked at me and he said, "What's your expertise?" And I went, I wrote my thesis in UBD, and he went, "You probably have more expertise than I do at this point." So that's my claim to fame as far as ed tech stuff goes. All right, we're going to get started today, folks. Again, Nearpod's in the chat. If you can't find it, feel free to toss a comment up there. We'll get you set up. It's also on it should be in the week 4 page for the class. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get into it and get started. So this week we are focusing on backwards design, understanding by design, and really getting into thinking ahead about your lesson plan, your unit plan at the end of the course. And this week's assignment really helps us to narrow down on that. So to start off with, remember we're in Zoom. So if you jump in, make sure that you turn off your mic unless we're allowing people to talk and share. Communicate by unmuting, and please interrupt me if you need to, but also jumping in the chat. And Tony's watching the chat tonight. Thanks, Tony. And he will be sending any questions my way, but also we're going to have a little bit of a back channel here too. So be prepared for that. All right. This week's quote is, "You will never know your limits unless you push yourself to them." I learned that one a few years ago with walking when I did 13 miles in one day. In Tokyo in a pair of flip-flops, and that was a really bad decision with some blistering effects afterwards. But when we apply this to education, we don't necessarily know where the awesome idea, the awesome thing that we want to come up with, the awesome lesson plan will take us until we push our limits to see what will happen with it. And then, like any good teacher, if it goes poorly, we rephrase. If it goes well, we rephrase. We want to see where it can go better the next time. And we're going to keep working towards it. All right. Today, just a quick chat. Check with you. I like a little social emotional learning chat. Check with you really quick. How you feeling today? I love The Simpsons. So move the GIF in that best represents you right now into the central area. It says resize it, but sadly, you can't resize it. I'm going to go to switch to student view here. And I'll show you how to do this if you've never done drag and drop. It's one of my favorite new features in Nearpod. Takes a second here really quick. So all you do, just pick your favorite GIF. I'm going to go with Frank Scorpio here and just drag it into the center there for you. Represent who you are, how you're feeling today. Hopefully we see less Lisa's crying and more maybe Bart grooving out, that sort of thing. Switch back to teacher view really quick here. And if you're not on the Nearpod, feel free to, toss how you're feeling in the chat too. We'd love to hear from you that way. We're seeing some Bart Simpsons, some Frank Scorpios, one of my favorites. Got Homer with the clapping monkey. That is fantastic as well. I'm a huge Simpsons nerd. Grew up on that. Was watching it last night. Well, and a lot of teachers, I don't know if the other instructors are hearing this through the grapevine right now, but I've been talking to a lot of my students and a lot of teachers around the state, and it's parent-teacher conference week this week or next. And a lot of people are starting to feel that burn of parent-teacher conferences. So it's not too long ago that I had some of those, and you'll get through it. You'll be great.
I have no idea how it's already October.
I know. Tomorrow. It's crazy. C-Forum is tomorrow again, which is crazy as well.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing, guys. We're going to move on to the next thing. It's another interactive here. What I'd like you to do is, do you have any questions at this point about this week's assignment, which we'll come back to and we'll explain here in a few minutes, the final project, or the class in general? And if you're going, I have no questions right now, that is totally fine. what you can do, and this is just kind of a little feature in Nearpod, and this is the back channel I was talking about a minute ago. On your left-hand side over here, where right now I have a little teacher viewer, there's going to be a little link to take notes on most slides. So you can take notes in Google Drive or on Office 365 throughout the presentation. So if you go, oh, Matt just talked about this awesome idea, feel free to put in your notes. We'll come back to that question slide at the end of class and check and make sure that we get all your questions answered as we go through it. Again, if you're not on the Nearpod though, feel free to drop it in the chat too. The amazing Tony Pellegrini is watching it for us.
I'm watching. Nothing yet, but I am watching.
No, that's perfect. That's all we need right there. All right, we'll give you 1 or 2 more minutes to get some questions in there if you have any right now. And I'm going to turn off student names really quick. All right, we got a couple little questions here, and you guys can see this. The final project has me scratching my head a little. I understand what the final product should be, but I'm coming up on Blake to where to start right now. Hopefully by the end of class, we'll actually give you some ideas on where to build and some things to do off of that as well. Let's see what else we got. I don't have units that are more than 1.5, stretching it for 2 weeks long because of all that I cover in 40 days. You said that we could do 2 units. How do I state that in the beginning statement? Oh, that's great. Tony, Clint, Brandon, Carol, any ideas on that one that they can toss that to right now?
When we look at the template, we can address that. We can just put in two separate goals or outcomes. Or
Fantastic. I love that. We'll look at that more and we'll come back to it again too. Let's see. And we'll look at one last question here. I'm hoping that throughout the course, the final project will be not as daunting as it seems. Not really a question, just my thoughts. I think that is every college, master's, any class ever, is we hope the project isn't as daunting as it seems. I don't think it will. I think most of you will find it to be hopefully almost exciting to write that, because it's going to be something that hopefully will help you become a better teacher down the line.
And all of the projects that we're doing, leading up to, what was it, Carol, about week 9 or so, all are parts of your unit plan. So, or hopefully it's intended that they will be. So,
and that's a great point. And today this week we really start that with our cover page, which we'll get to in a few minutes. Thanks for bringing that up, Clint. All right. Again, as we go through the class, if you're going, I have a question, toss it in your notes, toss it in the chat. We'll come back to the end of the class and make sure we get your questions answered. All right. This week's work, you have a reading, chapter 1, just chapter 1, and understanding by design. You're going to be creating your unit cover page, which, to be very clear for everyone, you are only doing page 1 of 6, not all 6 pages. You'll do all 6 over the course of the next few weeks. Page 1, and we'll hit that and we'll show you exactly what we're looking for on that in a couple pages or in a couple slides down. And then your discussion this week is your teaching practices and understanding by design, which if by the end of this class you don't really understand understanding by design, always get with your teacher. We'll help you get into a good place with that. But also I've provided a few extra videos in this Nearpod that we won't watch during this class time for time's sake, but will definitely help you to understand a little bit more fluidly. All right. Right now, we're going to do a quick collaboration board. And again, if you're not on Nearpod, you can just do this in the chat on our Zoom call. The collaboration board, what the question is that we're going to have you do is, what does your final unit cover? And what we're looking for is, just want you to do a quick, 1 to 2 sentence. What is your grade level that you're going to be looking at, your content area, and the technology that supports that unit that you're planning? Feel free to add some GIFs or pictures, but mostly we're just looking for like 1 to 2 sentences of what is your general idea of what that unit's going to look like. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn that on, and you guys can go ahead and start sharing some answers out. I'll give you 1 to 2 minutes on it. I'm going to pick on an instructor right now. Brandon, if you were writing this content area lesson plan for 3 weeks, what would be your dream subject matter to write a 3-week lesson plan on?
Physical education.
Okay. What's specifically inside of it?
What's the question? Sorry, Matt.
Specifically, what inside physical education?
A climbing unit. I would do something with climbing.
Ooh, nice. I could see you doing a 3-week unit on how to run an ultra marathon as well.
We could do that too. We could throw that in there just for fun.
That'd be fantastic. What about you, Carol? Same question.
I would probably do it on, I saw a lesson today that I was kind of sparking my thinking that was on multiplication and how to do it with many different strategies. This was in a 3rd grade class. And one of the things that the teacher had them do today was create a video tutorial. So they were teaching somebody else how to do their strategy that they thought worked best for them. So I think I would try to string that along, and it would be a unit rather than just one lesson. It would probably be several lessons, but include that technology piece.
I love it,
that.
Carol. I love it too, Matt. If you can teach it, you have learned it.
Exactly. And while you're on the mic, Tony, we'll toss it over to you. What would be your dream 3-week unit?
I'm in the middle of one right now, creating a PPAT assessment practice or practicum for teachers to pass the PPAT that are working towards their professional license. I know that's not K-12, but it's what I'm in the middle of right now. And we're going to use a lot of technology, a lot of video, a lot of responding associated with that. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Hey guys, I'm sorry. And thank you so much. That's awesome, Tony. I don't know what's going on with the waiting for teacher input. I'm not getting any messages on my side, folks.
We do have one in the chat that says waiting for teacher input. Sorry,
Yeah.
a couple. I lost connection. There's a message waiting.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
And then it just stopped.
That is so weird, guys.
That was me too. I was halfway through it and then just said stop. So now
Weird.
I'm doing it again.
Are you guys able to still see the Nearpod here?
Yeah.
All right. Well, hold on to your ideas then. Put them in the chat if you would like. I would love to see them that way too. We'll come back to this idea. But the bigger idea is that we want to generate some ideas for your lesson plan and your unit plan, developing and thinking about what that idea might be. And I thought it would be helpful to hear from our instructors as well, which is really kind of cool. All right. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into our actual presentation today. So design and designing is basically the idea to have purposes and intentions to plan and then execute. You're developing a research plan and a plan for a project, and you're going to have purpose and intent behind it. Rather than just throwing something together, we are looking to build something that works well for everyone in that situation. So a couple things that are thoughts from the text that we're reading this week. Number one, too many teachers focus on the teaching, not the learning. I always go to, and I'm just going to switch tabs here really quickly here. I go to this TED Talk. It's a pretty famous one that most people have seen. And if you haven't seen this one, I'll link it in my announcements. I'll send it out to the other instructors to send it out as well. So this is Sir Ken Robinson, his TED Talk from, I believe, 2007. He talks about it's how to escape education's death valley. But one of the most famous lines in here is he talks about the action sense of verbs. He says, you might be teaching, but is anyone actually learning? And he says an analogous thing is you might be on a diet, but are you actually losing any weight? And so that's kind of a big thing about forward design when we're talking about understanding about design and the principles of design is we want to focus on, is there going to be learning happening? How is that learning going to happen? Not necessarily the teaching processes. Those teaching processes should support student learning first and foremost. Then also
Can I give just a very short example? A couple of years ago, Washington County School District had as its a district theme, improve student achievement. Not use this practice, use that practice, but we're focused on what students are achieving.
That's awesome. And that's really the focus of things like competency-based learning, personalized competency-based learning that are the focus in a lot of districts now in the state. And it's a really good thing to switch over to that mode of what can we have our students learn and what can they show in that learning rather than, hey, am I going to get stood up and lecture? The second quote here, twin sins of traditional design, action-oriented or hands-on without being minds-on. So we are giving a student a worksheet, a project, something to do to keep them busy rather than actually turning on their minds and getting them excited. I always think about, and not to pick on anybody that's ever done this, because I have done it as well, but crossword puzzles. I remember doing a lot of crossword puzzles in certain classes when I was growing up. And yeah, finding a word in a jumble is fine, or doing a puzzle is fine, but is that really the best use of time to activate student learning and engagement throughout the process? Last quote here, though considerations about what to teach and how to teach it may dominate our thinking as a matter of habit, the challenge is to focus first on the desired learnings from which appropriate teaching will logically follow. And I think the key one there is that matter of habit. What are the teaching habits that prevent us from moving forward and really engaging with our students in a practical, learning-based manner? So continuing on from that, I love this quote that we pulled out for this presentation. Good design then is not so much about gaining a few new technical skills as it about learning to be more thoughtful and specific about our purposes and what they imply. The goal is the purpose. What are we trying to do in our classroom? What are we trying to teach? What do we want our students to learn? And if we keep that in mind, that end goal of what is the thing that we want our students to learn, everything else will follow behind it. But we have to first think about the end goal in mind rather than, the difficulty of the day in front of us. All right, that leads us to UBD, understanding by design, the stages of backwards design. And the first step in understanding by design is that you identify your desired result, which for we as teachers is usually something tied to our standard that we're trying to get our students to show competency in, so that we know that they know the subject matter that we're teaching. So like, for instance, I came from the language arts world. One of the biggest things that I wanted my students to leave my 9th grade classroom with was a good understanding of how to write a research paper. It's a simple thing, but it's in the core. And I wanted my students to write that research paper. Now, how they did that was less important to me at the beginning of planning my lesson as it was that end result of them knowing how to write a research paper. There's lots of components in that research paper, understanding citations and formatting and being able to pull together a topic and all that good stuff that we learned over the course of our lifetimes. But that was less important than the big part of, I want my students to write a research paper. They need to know that for the core. And so as we talk about UBD, the big ideas and skills, what are the overall goals? What should students take away from my course? Okay, having those learning objectives first and foremost. Then the second step is determine acceptable evidence. What are the things that we could have as proof that the students learned how to write a research paper? Now, in the core, it says research writing. Okay. But can I have my students prove that they know how to do research and do research oriented writing in another way than doing a formal research paper? Well, absolutely. If they do a really great video that has sources to back up what they're doing and they cite those sources. What if they do a great presentation that has those as well? And what if they do the research essay in a different way, maybe in narrative form? Those sorts of things all play a role in what's going on. But the goal is again, we're determining what's acceptable evidence for that overall goal that we're trying to get our students to do. So again, culminating at assessment tasks. How will I know if my students are learning what they need to do, what they need to? And the last thing that in UBD that comes along is the planning of the learning experiences and the instruction. So after you've determined what the thing you want the students to learn is, after you determine the acceptable evidence for that task or that learning, then you think about the day-to-day learning experiences and instruction. And oftentimes we get mired down in those learning instructions and experiences. We think more about the lecture tomorrow that I have to give or the daily bell work than we think about the overall arching plan of what's going on in my class and where do I want to take my students to get to. So in this case, teaching and learning events, what instructional strategies and activities are needed to achieve the results? So I always think of it, in that great terminology that we use in education all the time, is scaffolding. How we want to get them all the way up to the top, to that desired learning objective, that we want the students to learn that thing in my class. Well, how do I bring them up over time to get there. And how long will it take? Sometimes it takes a week, 2 weeks, in our case, 3 weeks, or maybe some of us are doing multiple lesson plans, and that's okay. But sometimes it takes us a full year or multiple years. One thing that always kept me kind of happy and excited in ninth grade English was that I knew that the ninth grade core and the 10th grade core were tied together. So I knew that if I set them up well in the ninth grade with English, their 10th grade classes would be even better. And so that kind of thought process of they're not going to achieve all the goals in maybe your class or even that unit. They're going to achieve it over time as well. All right. Quick resource here. Not going to play it right now, but it is a video by Jay McTighe, who is one of the founders and one of the main voices within Understanding by Design. It's a 7-minute video of him explaining UBD from a very technical standpoint. And I think Tony put it best couple of weeks ago. If you need some help falling asleep, this might be a good resource, but it's definitely recommended to give you a good background on it. Jay's kind of a quiet speaker, but he does give a really good background on the more technical side of how to do UBD in your classroom. So definitely recommended. And this will be posted as a student-paced activity right after this. So you are more than welcome to go back and watch this as well. And I'll add the Sir Ken Robinson video on there as well. All right, this week's supplemental reading is Chapter 3, Enhancing the Science and Arts. How can I use technology to establish and maintain classroom rules and procedures? So in there, it talks about 2 large portions of the classroom experience for students. On one side, we have the classroom layout, physical design of our classroom, and how that plays a role. And on the flip side, the rules and procedures that move our students through that physical space and keep them excited and entertained about what's going on in our classroom. Those 2 parts work in concert and should be thought about in concert together. And definitely a great reading if you have the extra time to read the supplemental work this week. All right, the discussion this week is you're going to reflect on your own teaching practices and how they relate to the principles of Understanding by Design. And if this is your first introduction to UBD and you're going, well, I haven't really thought too much about it, this is a great place to explore how you might use it in the future and engage with it as a professional teacher down the line, or as a curriculum developer down the line. It's a really great process to get into. It is very massive when you get down to actually lesson planning in UBD, but the goals are all the same of we're going to identify what we want our students to learn. We're going to move down to what are the things that the acceptable evidence is. And then at the final, what are the things that will move them to that experience? All right. The assignment this week is a couple things. So number 1, you need to decide on what is your final unit project. What is your unit going to be? That content, that technology, and your grade level. Obviously, you should probably already know your grade level. If you're not teaching right now, you got some options, which is cool. But make sure you're thinking about the content and then also thinking about the technology that plays a role in that. That will help you a ton down the line. And if you're going, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to go with that this week, and then you change your mind down the line, I'm sure we can all work with you as instructors in this class. One thing to consider in this is to consider a real life unit that you will teach down the line. We've hit on this a couple of times, but it's more practical to do some work on something that you'll use than something you won't use down the line. So if I were in your seat, I would be thinking about a unit I'd teach in maybe January when I come back from winter break. It's usually a doldrum time period of the school year. Let's figure out a great unit that I can apply to that time period and plan it thoroughly for class credit, but then use it in January or thereabouts. Number 2, you're going to grab the unit template, which is listed on the assignment description this week. And then you're going to save that document. And when you do that, when you get into it, you're going to be filling out only page 1. And we're going to look at here in just a second, what sections of page 1. It's only specific things. So don't worry too much if you're going, oh no, 6 pages. I don't have time for 6 pages this week. It's just page 1. You'll do the rest of the pages over the next couple of weeks. So here is the sections that we'd like to look at and have you guys do a little bit of work on. So you'll be able to download this template either as a Google Doc or Microsoft Office document. There's multiple versions of it on there. So if one of them doesn't work, you should be able to grab those. But if you can't get in, email your instructor, we'll get you a copy. What you're going to have here is just a couple key things. So you're going to first be able to have a unit title. You need to have your grade levels, your subject areas. You're going to have some keywords. So these are the things that are associated with your unit. Maybe some of the bigger ideas. Like for instance, if I was doing a unit on James Joyce, I might do Irish author, novel, unit plan, something like that. The design by, the time frame that you're going to teach it, your school district, and your school. So basic biographic information, which is great. And then the last thing right here is a brief summary of your unit. So Tony, maybe you can jump in, or Brandon or Carol. I'm thinking a paragraph. What are you guys thinking?
Perfect. That sounds great.
Okay. So around a paragraph, 5 to 7 sentences, giving us a brief overview of the content, the technology, the grade level, all the things that we'll be looking for in that unit. It doesn't need to be, super fancy. We just really want to see what your general idea is so that we can build off of it and help you out with it over the next couple of weeks. Anything to add on that, other instructors?
In the past, I've had a few learners say, they've got started with this assignment. They did a great job. And then all of a sudden their principal comes in next week and says, I need you to work on this lesson or this activity or this unit. Can I change next week? Can I change in 2 weeks? From my perspective, you can, but you're going to be kind of catching up and keeping up. And I don't want to force that on other instructors.
And I think that's a great advising point, Tony, that we don't want you to necessarily think that you're tied and married to the unit plan that each topic you choose today, but it will be a lot easier throughout the rest of the course because we're going to guide you through it to stick with the same topic. We got a great question from Sarah in the chat. Are we creating this unit from scratch, or can we use a curriculum we've been assigned and then change it to add the additional requirements? I'm seeing Tony nodding and a few other instructors nodding. So I would say, yes, you are good to either do completely from scratch or do from a curriculum that's been kind of you're using as a group in your school or as a grade level team. All right.
I'd say, reflect on maybe a unit that could use a little bit of reworking, or something that might benefit from another close look, that you could improve.
I call it the ick unit because you always go, I don't want to teach this week, but you have to for standards reasons. So yeah, I agree with Clint. Like if you can pick a unit that, again, or a time of year like January, like what are you going to teach in January or March that you're maybe not super excited about, but you have to teach? That's a really good place to start, because then you can do some forward thought and really plan something really great. All right, we got another question from Holly. For me, I don't teach a specific curriculum or specific subject. Am I okay to pick any topic? I'm seeing some head nods. So yeah, Holly, I would say go with the same question I asked the instructors earlier of what's your dream unit for 3 weeks. Go ahead, Clint. It looks like you had something to say too.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. That gets us to questions, and we've already answered a few of them. I'm going to go back all the way to the questions page and see if we have any other questions as well on there. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll give you guys some wait time of like 1 to 2 minutes. Is there anything that the other instructors would like to add or announce right now as well?
I think so. Yeah, just this week, just that cover page, just basic information, broad strokes.
Yep.
Nothing real specific this week.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm seeing no more extra questions here. We covered all the ones that are already on the question page here. I'll just jump again to the end.
Nothing in the chat either.
Perfect. So again, just kind of reviewing for one more minute here. Use the template. It is listed on the assignment description. You're going to be creating a 3-week unit all throughout the next 8 weeks. So you got plenty of time to build this. This week, we're only concerned about page 1 of the template. And then just make sure you keep track of your movement. If you do dramatically want to change your topic, talk to us before you do so we can give you some ideas and some feedback on that. Make sure you're staying caught up. If you have any questions or worries, or you are like, if you are enormously sick this week and you're like, I just can't get to class, I can't do this, let us know. We are flexible. We would rather see you finish the course and do well and get your credit than penalize you for missing a week. So make sure you're just being communicative. That's really what we're looking for. Now, and oh, sorry, I skipped this, but I'm just going to toss that in there as well. Make sure you're posting your discussion groups by Sunday, replies by Wednesday. Remember, we're looking for 1 post that's your initial post, 2 follow-ups with other classmates. And I don't know about the other instructors, but I'm doing all my feedback on discussion groups as a video on my announcements page. So if you're in my class, that's where you're going to be getting your feedback at across those discussions. And I personally have loved the discussions the last couple of weeks.
They have been great. Oh my goodness. I appreciate the camaraderie, the commonality. It's been very, very positive. Thank you.
Yeah. It's been, as the kids say, straight fire. It's been amazing. I love it. All right. Last thing here. Here are all the instructors. Make sure you're contacting us if you have any questions, worries, anxieties. We are more than happy to communicate with you, work with you, and get you into a good place. And I think with that, we are all done. I'll stop sharing my screen. There we go. If you have any questions, feel free to hang out.
I just want to review my idea. Is that okay?
Please go ahead.
Okay. I teach digital art, and I thought I teach on the Navajo Nation, and there's these Coyote Dene stories, and they're like the ones that they have at the district is like from the 1980s, and it's totally Navajo. And I cannot, it's totally Navajo from the 1980s. I know, and I talked to the Navajo teacher about this idea, and she thought it would be a great idea. I was thinking of with my digital art and my CCA, College and Career Awareness, that we will recreate those Dene stories, Coyote stories, in claymation and using iMovie in doing that. Does that sound something like? Okay, I'm excited. I'm going to be starting it in a couple weeks. So, yeah.
Awesome.
It sounds like a presentation for rural schools next summer. That would be wonderful to be able to share. So I'm serious, cool. Natalie. Serious.
Oh, good. It'll be fun. I hope it works out because I want to do it, like some of these Spanish, American, there's a lot of shows and cartoons that are using both Spanish and English. And I said, why don't we use both Navajo and English? That way white kids could, understand it as well, what's going on, using the Navajo terms and
fantastic
stuff.
And like was Natalie, and like was mentioned a little bit earlier, if they can teach it, they've learned it. If they can create those concepts and talk about those concepts in Navajo or English, they understand the concepts.
Yeah, and I'm collaborating with the Navajo teacher, so it'll be good.
That's great.
Right, thank you.
Ellie, my only caveat is that you have to share the videos with us somehow. I want to see those.
I hope it turns out good. So
she's in my course, so I'm set.